Hello and welcome to Mountain Patriot Homestead. It is a cold April day here on the mountain, and although we have been in upper 70-degree temperatures, and in the next week or two we're going to be back into those again, today we're actually forecasted to have some snow. So I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to share with you a steak chili recipe and try to get some warmth in us. So let me get my apron on and we'll get started. This recipe is a steak chili recipe, but honestly, you don't have to use steak. You can use stew meat, or as I'm just using a chuck roast that I'm going to chop up and use it just as if it was steak. In this bowl, I have that 2 pounds of chuck roast cut up into bite-sized pieces, and that's about where I've got mine. And I've got it dried off because I want the salt and pepper that I'm going to sprinkle on it to stick to it real well. And I'm just going to eyeball it here. I'm going to do about a teaspoon of salt and about a teaspoon of ground pepper. Now I am going to taste this as I go, not while it's still raw of course, but as it cooks I'm going to taste it. And I suggest you do this with any of your cooking to make sure that it is seasoned right, because a recipe may call for a certain amount of seasoning and it just not be enough, and you certainly don't want it to be too much. So I'm starting out with about a teaspoon of salt and pepper sprinkled on there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this heated up in my Dutch oven. So let's get that process started. Now, this step that I'm doing here, you could actually skip. This is not called for in the recipe itself, but it does call for 2 tablespoons of oil to brown your meat in. Well, I have some, it's just pretty much fat of a smoked pork, and I'm going to use it for my oil in here because, you know, why not? Why not use some good old smoked meat to just add a little bit more depth of smokiness to your chili? And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to let this cook down and get me some oil, and then I'll measure out the 2 tablespoons that I'll need, and we'll continue on. I've taken out the pork that I used to get my lard, and I have added my beef, and this is over a medium-high heat. And if you think it's too much, just turn it down a hair. Depending on how large the pot is that you're using, you may want to do this in 2 batches because you're just going to brown this just a little on both sides, and then you're going to be taking it out. Isn't that pretty? This is home-raised beef. We're so blessed to be able to put that on our table. It's quietening down now after the oil is cooled a little bit from the beef. Do you like chili? And do you like hot chili, or do you just like mild? Maybe you like vegetarian chili. When we had 3 boys at the house, we ate a lot of deer chili. because it was what we could afford. Because at the time we had a location that we were able to harvest them from and put food on the table for the boys. And I have to say that deer chili is probably my favorite chili. Our normal chili that we eat around here is made from ground beef. We use our already ground. But you know, steak chili just kind of adds that extra, I don't know, is it elegance maybe to a chili? Is that even a thing? Okay, my heat's getting a little too low. I'm just going to heat it back up a little bit, just turning it up. And I know that sometimes you probably wonder, why in the world do I not cook over on the stove? Well, my little old kitchen is just really not set up where I can get to things easily, and trying to set up a camera and still be able to cook at the stove is really difficult. So I just use this little hot plate just so I can get the camera in here and y'all see what I'm doing. I have removed that 2 pounds of ground beef, and you see that it left behind some of the juices from the meat. I am not going to remove that. That is just extra flavor. I'm going to leave it in there. To these juices, I have added 1 chopped onion. This is a large onion, and I am just going to kind of stir it up, and I'm going to just let it cook over that same medium-high heat and let it soften up and kind of brown a little bit before I add my next ingredients. These onions have cooked until they're soft, and I'm just going to kind of push them off to the side so I can get my next ingredient in here, which is about 5½ ounces of tomato paste. Let's get that in there. Yes, I know, I'm still using one of my Christmas dishes. I live Christmas year round, so you'll just have to forgive me on that. I'm just going to stir that in here, and it's going to develop a sweet smell as the acidity in that tomato paste breaks down. And it's just going to smell sweet. And it only takes, you know, 2 or 3 minutes for that to happen. Again, I have some of these extra juices in here from when I cooked the beef. And then the onion, of course, has some juices in it. I don't drain any of that out because I just think that makes all those different levels of flavor. And by no means am I an expert chef. I'm not a scientist, so I can't tell you how all of this works, but I just know it makes it taste better. So I just leave the juices in there. And once I smell that sweetness, or maybe your sense of smell is not that good, but once it's been cooking for 2 or 3 minutes like that, I'm just going to stir it all together, because now is the really let's bump it up part, because I'm adding about 3 tablespoons of chili powder, and 2 or 3 teaspoons, I guess, of cumin. Again, I like a really flavorful chili, and so I am real liable to taste this later as it's cooked for a while and that meat is getting done, and taste it just to see if I want to add some more, because again, I don't want no bland food. I want good flavorful chili, and because of that, now this is completely optional, y'all, but I'm gonna add some cayenne. And I am going to sprinkle me some just crushed red pepper with flakes in there, because I like a little heat in my chili. Don't want no cold chili. I want some warm chili, and more than just from the heat. So I am just letting that cook. Alright, see, it's gotten thick. It's almost made a roux in there just from that seasoning along with those juices. But here is a part that is different from when I cook just my regular chili. With my steak chili here, I am using a homemade bone broth. It's about, I guess about 3 cups of homemade bone broth. Now you can buy store-bought broth. If you do that to enhance the flavor a little bit, what I would suggest is get some of that better than bouillon in the beef flavor. Now I'm not trying to advertise for them or nothing, but it does have a really good beefy, strong beefy flavor. And so I would suggest that just to kind of bump up the beef flavor some. Alright. And I'm just going to let that cook a little bit. See, it's I've had it in the freezer, so you can see it's still got a little bit of that fat on top of that, and that's just going to melt in there, add a little bit more flavor to it. Now that is another reason why be careful on adding salt and pepper in the beginning of how much you add, because you can always add more later, because like this beef broth has salt and pepper in it. It was cooked with salt and pepper on the bones themselves and into the broth. So it has salt and pepper. Depending on your crushed tomatoes that you're going to be using, they may have salt in them. So just be aware when you're putting your salt and stuff in it that, you know, there may be more than you expected, so just kind of watch for that. Okay. If you are using store-bought crushed tomatoes, this would be a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. I am using just a jar of tomatoes that I canned up, quart jar, and adding that into there. Now, I've seen some recipes that call for honey or sugar or any of that kind of stuff to be going off into your chili. Guys, I'm sorry, I don't put no sweet stuff in my chili. If you want to, by golly, you just go right on ahead and put whatever. If you want honey in your chili, you put honey in your chili, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to put that beef right back in there. Give it a stir. Just like that. And I am going to put a lid on this. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. I want it to be simmering. And I'm going to put a lid on it. And I'm going to just let it gently cook for the next couple of hours, and that should make it just in time for us to have some good steak chili for our lunch or dinner if you're from our neck of the woods. I showed you how tender that beef was when I took a piece of it out of the pot, and I just want to show you, look at that richness of color in there. Now, I will tell you, this is not my typical chili. My chili, normally when I make it with ground beef, it does not resemble any type of a soup. You could eat that chili literally with a fork, and I do, because it is just that thick. This is not thick at all. If you wanted it to be thicker, you could use less of the broth. You could use, probably a lot of why this is thinner is because I used my own canned tomatoes, and I didn't use like a thick crushed tomatoes from the store. So between the amount of broth that I used and the tomatoes that I used, it does make seriously, it looks like a beef stew, but the smell coming off of this says pure chili. Now, I put a little note further back in the video to show you that I did forget to add the garlic on the video. I mentioned it in text on there to remind you, put garlic in there. I did put garlic in mine, and I went back, I tasted it like I said I would, and I went back and added some more of the chili powder, and I added more salt, and I added more cayenne pepper because, again, I wanted it to be warm. But this is a thin chili. It is not thick like my normal chili would be. But sorry, this bowl is not fitting on this plate, so it's rocking and making noise. But I'm going to give this a taste just to first I'm gonna blow it and then give it a taste just to make sure that it passes muster. It definitely tastes like chili. Again, it is not thick. Another way you could thicken it up if you wanted to would be to add a cornstarch slurry and do that. My way of enjoying it would be crumble up some cornbread into it. Now, I know there's always the debate of beans or no beans. I don't put beans in my chili. I have eat beans in chili, but for us, we prefer it without beans. If you want to add beans to your chili, honey, you go right on ahead and add beans. You eat it however you like it. But I'm going to finish off this bowl of my steak chili. And I think it turned out as a success, even though it is not what my normal chili looks like. It sure does taste good. So I'm going to finish this up because I've got to go out in the cold. We've got another project going on outside, and I want to have something warm inside. So y'all have a wonderful afternoon. I love y'all. Hope you come back again real soon. Mountain Patriot Homestead, signing out.